David, it's been a while since we've been in the BelTel Football studio. A lot has changed at Ballymena United since then. On Sunday a week ago, Jim Ervin was relieved of his duties at the showgrounds, and then a couple of days ago, Oran Kearney was appointed the new manager of Ballymena United. Oran Kearney's a man you know well. You managed him for long enough at Linfield. What do you think he is going to bring to this Ballymena team? Obviously, he had great success at Coleraine, then went to St Mirren, and then it came back to Coleraine. Second stint maybe wasn't as successful, but he is a very experienced Irish League manager.
Well, I know Oran very well. Obviously, I know Jim very well. I was privileged to work with both of them. I think from Oran's perspective, obviously, I remember his footballing playing career coming to an end. I remember him going into management at Limavady, and obviously then on to Coleraine, and that first time round, I think it was a League Cup. There was an Irish Cup win, and that was more than a successful period for Coleraine, which led him ultimately to his time across at St Mirren. And coming back to Coleraine, maybe things didn't go exactly as how I would hoped. He went through a difficult period in terms of just simply getting results. And then there was the whole transition from part-time to full-time, which, I've been on record saying several times that I thought it was a very difficult situation to manage. Everything seemed to be very, very rushed. And then there was a further change with, the new owner coming in and then Oran, stepping away, and Dean Shields, who had become head coach, stepping away, Michael O'Connor, who was assistant, stepping away. And so he's had that period out, which always gives a manager time to reflect and to think, well, how was my last, time in management, and what would I do differently? So he's probably had that time of reflection. I would say that this opportunity is one for Oran to maybe come back and re-establish himself. There's absolutely no doubting about his ability, about his talent. Having been successful previously at Coleraine, obviously over at St Mirren, where I thought he did a wonderful job in difficult circumstances. But, Coleraine ending the way that he did, I remember listening to a couple of interviews and he was very clear that he had unfinished business in the Irish League, that he certainly was not finished with Irish League football, and when opportunity would come up, he would, and if it was ripe for him and obviously the club, then he would be very keen to return. So I think he sees this as very much as an opportunity to re-establish, himself and put his marker back down with regards to his managerial career.
Do you think there's an element there he almost has to prove himself again? There's no doubt what he's achieved in the past, but that's now, that League Cup win, that Irish Cup win, it's more than 5 years ago now.
No, Keith, that's actually very fair, but opens the door to another answer, in that managers have to prove themselves every single week. It really doesn't matter who or what you are. Yes, you build up some kudos in what you've done previously. You build up a reputation. You build up expectation. But to be honest with you, when I was managing Linfield or Ballymena United, expectations were high all of the time. You were having to prove yourself constantly. And if you ever thought that you didn't, then you found yourself in difficulty very quickly. You had to be as hungry as you wanted the players to be for success and to do well. So there will be part of Oran will think, right, well, I've had these previous experiences, Limavady, Coleraine, St Mirren, back to Coleraine. This is now a new opportunity for me to, if anything, probably prove to himself, because that's where you start. At least that's where I start. In any situation. I know when going to Ballymena United, regardless of what I did at Linfield, I had very much to prove to others, but primarily to myself, Keith, that I could do the job and do it well.
What Ballymena United better than most, and you know the supporters very well. They're a fan base that love energy and passion, and Oran has delivered that in the past at Coleraine. But tactically, what do you think Oran is going to bring to this Ballymena United team? They've been underperforming, there's no question about that, but they do have some superbly talented players. Ben Kennedy's the obvious one, but he's far from the only one. What do you expect from Oran Kearney's Ballymena. Takes a minute to get that right, doesn't it? So
it
used to
does. Well,
saying,
you've got to remember he was a player there
Yeah.
for several years, and I remember eventually wrestling him from Ballymena United and from to come to Linfield. But there is no doubt that there was a decent budget there, that money was spent with regards to recruitment, but also as well. And I think in defence of Jim, in terms of the players that he brought in, he didn't have them consistently together as a group. And I know people will say injuries and unavailability are part and parcel. I get that, very, very much. But I don't think he ever enjoyed having all of the players that he had recruited available to him at one time. And, you look at the results and you've these excellent runs, where things went particularly well and maybe 3-4 victories in a trot. And then you look at other results where they maybe weren't so consistent. So I think the first thing with regards to Oran, we'll go in and, I've understood that he has said to them, it's up to the players to prove to me that they're worthy of being here. That's one approach. And it's very much then, him deciding, any manager, what you do with the players that you have available to you, you work out a way in which you can get the best out of them. What particular shape, what formation will suit the players that you have available, and then over a time, you will probably work towards them putting your own stamp on, and maybe bringing those in who you would want to have around you to be able to play in the way you wish to play. And for those who maybe don't fit into your plans, then they move on. So I'm not avoiding the question, Keith, in saying what will he bring tactically, but we can talk about tactics, shape and formation. Ultimately, it's about the players you have available to you at any given time, and you've got to work out a way which is best for them in terms of getting results.
A big question in recent times has been, is it possible for a semi-professional team to compete with our full-time teams, the 4 full-time teams that are the top 4 in the league, as we talk today, David? Obviously, Ballymena have a decent budget. That's obvious from the players that they signed. Oran Kearney's a man with ambition. We know that from his time at Coleraine. What can Ballymena do here? What is realistic? Not talking about this season, because obviously they've got off to a difficult start, but going forward, can a semi-pro club like Ballymena still challenge for qualification for Europe and major honours, or is that a thing of the past?
Well, we look back at last year's example of Dungannon, and they were quite exceptional. And after a difficult start to the beginning of this season, you look at their form of late and where they've got themselves back into. Will someone be able to consistently break into that top 4? It's going to be very, very difficult. And for me, a realistic target in the first instance would be the top 6 to give yourself a chance of qualification for Europe. I also think that the League Cup, while for some teams, you look at Ballymena, they've got themselves through, to a semi-final. You've got to look at that as a route to Europe, because that's ultimately, Keith, what it's about. It's about qualification for Europe and how that money can help you go forward. But you've got the 4 full-time teams. They look very strong, and I think it's going to be a mammoth effort for any club to consistently break into that top 4. I think top 6 is probably more realistic. As I say, I pointed to Dungannon, what they did last year, which was remarkable, and probably will be better versed at the end of this season, because this is a new Coleraine with their investment. Larne keep doing what they're doing. Their retention of players have been highly impressive. Linfield, when you see what they did last year, but you also look at the injuries which they have sustained thus far. And Glentoran, we have some brilliance and some exceptional runs and some great games that they've got victories, other games not as much. So I think we'll probably be better informed at the end of the season to say categorically, will a part-time team, break into that top 4? But it's going to be a tough ask. A
word for Jim Ervin before we go. Relieved of his duties Sunday a week ago. It was a tough start to the season for Ballymena. Well, they made actually quite a good start to the season. Then there was a run of difficult results. So it wasn't a massive surprise maybe when the decision was made. But it's really tough for him personally, because he'd not long signed a long-term full-time contract. I mean, there's a personal toll here when somebody loses their job.
I'll put my cards on the table. Jim Ervin is a very valued and dear friend of mine, having previously, been his manager at Linfield and then at Ballymena United. This is a young man who voluntarily left Linfield because he wanted more game time and actually gave up a testimonial, albeit that after he left there was a number of people who got together and had a couple of testimonial events. This is a young man who, of the highest integrity and who, worked his absolute socks off. So on a personal level, I'm bitterly disappointed, that Jim, sort of was relieved of his duties. I understand in the world of football that it's all about results, and I understand that, those who pay the piper, they can decide on the tune. I can understand why the decision was made. I can understand the rationale as to why it was made. I just don't think it's great when any manager, as I say, loses their job. The one thing I'll say to you now, that will not define his managerial career. He's a very young man. I have no doubt that he will regroup. He will take time to reflect, and you will see him back in the game of that. There's no doubt, and he will be better for this experience. While he may not think it now, he certainly will be. The signing of the contract, the long-term contract, what he gave up, that needs to be sorted out, and I would trust that will be done so accordingly. The one thing that Ballymena do, they do look after people, look after them well in terms of whatever circumstances they find themselves in. So sad, disappointing, something that I would have preferred not to happen, but ultimately I understand the world of football as much as anybody, and unfortunately Jim has lost his job, but this will not be the be-all and end-all of Jim Ervin.